It is nice to be back with you again on Earthfile. Welcome to the program. I am Ayola Kasim. Today we start with this question. How can Nigeria achieve food security and fight off land grabbers? Over the years, the term land grabbing has been evolving. It is not only petroleum companies and home developers that grab lands these days. Even those in agribusiness have joined the league, and it is becoming ever so difficult to be able to tell which activities of these companies affect the food supply. So who is taking up the land and making the nation hungry? Our focus today on Earthfile.
That rice, you take it. And look, it's international grade rice. Huh?
Since I became the Minister of Agriculture, Dr. Akinwumi has been saying he will not be an import minister, and some will tell you his work is proving just that.
I am praising the federal minister for introducing, for all his efforts, but it must be sustained.
Confusing laws on land, much of which is owned or claimed by government officials, also mean it is difficult to expand. That has left 60% of Nigeria's arable land fallow. The government wants to add 20 million tons of domestic food production by 2020.
Nigeria actually has huge agricultural potential, but we are a net importer of food. We're spending, 635 billion naira importing wheat. We're spending 1 billion naira a day buying rice. We're importing crude palm oil when we used to be the largest producer of palm oil in the world. We are importing almost everything under the sun. So basically what we had done was that we had neglected agriculture in the past. And despite all of our potential, we're wasting all of our hard-earned foreign exchange doing that. So the first thing that we did when I was appointed minister was to say that that pattern has to end. Nigeria has to unlock its potential in agriculture.
Farmers have said one backlash has been a rise in smuggling of rice and sugar from neighboring countries and into ports. Higher cassava output has been used to make flour, reducing wheat imports mostly from the United States by almost 9%. The world's second largest importer of rice, Nigeria, aims to become self-sufficient by 2015. After introducing a 100% tax on polished rice imports, likely to mostly affect countries like India, Thailand, and Brazil. But Dr. Akinwumi is fascinated with Brazil and its agricultural policies that he is willing to adopt them.
Look at Brazil. Brazil has an institution called Embrapa, which is a world-class research center. It was Embrapa that made Brazil what it is today. And my own vision is that the Agricultural Research Center of Nigeria, which is our own apex research institution that coordinates all of our agricultural research centers, will become like Brazil. We have to be disciplined. It's not about how much money you're putting into something, it's about how much output you're getting per naira of investment.
And to achieve this, he has to go private. According to him, it is time to run agriculture as a business, mainly because of so many problems facing the sector. First, duties on agricultural equipment were scrapped and tax breaks given to companies willing to invest in both farming and industrial processes. The country's reforms have drawn new foreign investors.
Today you have some of the largest companies in the world investing in Nigeria. Cargill is the largest producer of starch in the world. They're setting up, as we speak, a big starch plant in Agbadu in Kogi State. That's going to do 70,000 metric tons of starch. They're working with flour mills of Nigeria. And they're also setting up a 50,000 metric tons sweetener plant. So which means that we can use cassava, which we have in abundance, to produce sweeteners that we use in the juice industry. You look today at the Unilever. Unilever is a global firm. They're investing in Nigeria now to use cassava for sorbitol. Sorbitol is what you use for oral hygiene for making toothpaste. You look at Agco, which is the world's #1 manufacturer of tractors. They're investing $100 million in Nigeria. You look at Dominion Farm, which is the largest rice farm in Kenya. They've put in $40 million into rice production in Nigeria, and the list goes on. So that tells you that our policies of agriculture as a business and the incentives that we are giving are actually working.
But with these investments comes a warning about the real intention of the foreign investors. Dominion Firms Limited, a multinational firm, has been accused of human rights abuses and land grab in Kenya. Lobby groups and environmental activists had raised serious concerns with Kenyan and the United Nations Environment Programme authorities about alleged environmental destruction and human rights abuses committed by Dominion Firms in Kenya's Yala Swamp. The firm is being accused of poor industrial agriculture and aquaculture projects which threaten the integrity of the Yala Swamp ecosystem and the health and well-being of up to 1 million residents. It was also being accused of flooding private agricultural and grazing lands as well as homes, forced thousands of people to relocate against their will, cutting fishermen off from communal fishing areas, and contaminating water that people and animals use for drinking.
For a long time, this country has operated on a development paradigm that we are going to develop through foreign direct investment. What that has translated to is that we give prominence to the foreign investor, be it a multinational company or be it a foreign government. What that means, therefore, is we are willing to undermine our own laws and institutions to be able to accommodate the foreign investor. 2, pay no heed to local communities in any particular area where we want certain investment to take place.
All the allegations the company has denied. Here in Nigeria, Dominion Rice has acquired 30,000 hectares to begin mechanized rice farming in the lowland part of Taraba State, close to rivers Benue and Taraba. According to the Taraba State Commissioner for Agriculture, the company is trying to bring in its equipment, and in the Commissioner's opinion, the company is doing fine. There are reports that the euphoria of signing Memorandum of Understanding with foreign investors, times without number, has led to the 21st century slavery under the guise of foreign investment, where African fertile lands are turned to African plantation, with local farmers becoming slaves on lands that were once before their ancestors. Many ask if the influx of these foreign investors is not a repeat of the mirror exchange colonial scam, where cheap fertile lands are grabbed cheaply and polluted in exchange for mere promises of a better life in terms of employment, poverty reduction, and education, basic amenities these rurals will willingly give up their lands for. Land grabs, it's not necessarily a problem when wealthy companies invest in agricultural land in poor countries for commercial use. But when families are kicked off the land or less food is grown as a result, that's a very big problem indeed. Recent data indicates that at least 33 million hectares of land use have been identified since 2001, and since the food price spikes of 2008, that's been happening more and more. Demand for land has soared as investors look for places to grow food for export, grow crops for biofuels, or simply bioplant for profit. But in many cases, land sold as unused or undeveloped is actually being used by poor families to grow food. It is estimated that 50 million hectares have already been released to foreign entities, with at least 20 African countries considering similar deals. Some of these leases, 99 years at $1 per hectare, are unbelievable deals, but they are only available to a select few. Local farmers, people who struggle to feed their families, gain access to fertile land and secure water for both personal consumption and agricultural activity, are not eligible for the deals being promoted in countries where millions of people remain dependent on food aid. There are so many disheartening statistics. 1.5 billion of the world's most impoverished farmers struggle to feed their families. 24,000 children die each day from poverty. Over 1.1 billion people have inadequate access to water, and 1 billion people go to bed hungry. That it's easy to be overwhelmed by numbers. The global land grab, to a great extent, has been spurred by the events surrounding the food and financial crisis of 2008. In response to the crisis, many developing countries looking to regain their economic footing increased their openness to foreign direct investment in emerging markets, particularly in agribusiness and tourism. As part of this trend, fertile land is being offered to investors, often at giveaway prices, and especially in Africa. These and other factors have ignited a global rush for the world's farmland by investors in what has become known as the global land grab phenomenon. The World Bank has been accused of facilitating this in the garb of various ratings or ranking it does of countries such as the Ease of Doing Business ranking and a new ranking system it is launching called Benchmarking the Business of Agriculture. An international campaign against a large-scale land grab in developing countries pointed out that such rankings were just a way of pushing poor countries to transfer thousands of acres of land from small farmers and herders who feed 80% of the world to industrial farming corporations of the West. The international campaign, Our Land, Our Business, has been launched by the Oakland Institute, a US-based policy think tank working along with non-governmental organizations and farmers and consumers organizations to hold the World Bank accountable for its role in what they called the rampant theft of land and resources from some of the world's poorest, who are the farmers, pastoralists, and indigenous communities. The campaign said the bank was facilitating land grabs and sowing poverty by putting the interests of foreign investors before those of locals. The campaigners point to Liberia, where dozens of business reforms between 2008 and 2011 attracted considerable foreign direct investment that resulted in the corporate acquisition of more than 607,000 hectares in the space of a few years, and the Philippines, which shot 40 places up the Doing Business rankings between 2011 and 2014, and where foreigners last year acquired 5.2 million hectares of land. They say that squeezing out the small farmers who often lack tenure, security, and government help, yet still produce the overwhelming majority of food in developing nations, is not only unfair but also dangerous. According to the World Bank Group, 9 billion people will need to be fed by 2050, meaning that global agricultural production will have to increase by at least 50%. Although the bank acknowledges that benchmarking the business of agriculture is built around the Doing Business report, it insists its focus is different. But experts in the field believe policymakers and media organizations are ignoring the fact that African middle classes and local ruling elites are the biggest drivers of the transfer of land ownership on the continent over the last few years, rather than foreign investors. They claim that the focus on large-scale overseas investors is distracting from the real story, that mid-sized farmers are behind agricultural growth in Africa, and this has policy implications which are not being addressed. Experts at the World Bank Conference on Land and Poverty, where the studies were discussed, said the majority of land guidelines fail to recognize the impact of mid-sized farms, and so governments may not be addressing the impact that farmers within this category have on land use. Land consolidation has longer-term implications for employment, according to the United Nations data. Africa has the youngest population in the world.